The smell of Tim Hortons coffee has been sitting on my kitchen counter for 2 hours now. Gone cold. I haven't touched it. I've been sitting in this chair since 7 this morning, watching the light move across the hardwood floor my husband sanded, by hand 31 years ago, thinking about what I am going to do with the rest of my life. My daughter called 40 minutes ago. I let it go to voicemail. That's the 11th time this week. I am 67 years old. I spent 34 years teaching grade 4 at the same elementary school in Oakville, Ontario. I know what it looks like when a child wants something from you and has decided that the wanting matters more than you do. I've seen it on 8-year-old faces. I never thought I would see it on hers. But I need to start at the beginning, because if I start here, in this kitchen, with that cold coffee and that quiet phone, it won't make any sense. And this story, as much as I wish it weren't mine to tell, does make sense. That's the part that hurts the most. When you look back, it all makes perfect, terrible sense. My husband passed spring of 2019, pancreatic cancer. We had 4 months from diagnosis to the end, and I spent every one of those months beside him. We had been married for 40 years. We built our life in that house on Lakeshore, raised our daughter there, planted the garden together, argued about the fence color twice, and both times ended up keeping the original white. When he was gone, the house became very large and very quiet. My daughter and her husband had been living in Toronto, in a condo near the waterfront. They'd been there for 6 years. She worked in marketing. He worked in something involving commercial real estate. I could never quite follow the specifics, though he explained it to me more than once, with the patience of a man who had long decided I wasn't worth explaining things to carefully. After her father passed, she started coming home more often. At first it felt like grief, like she needed the house too, needed to walk through the rooms where he had been. I welcomed it. I made her tea. I let her sit in his chair. I thought we were finding each other again after years of polite distance. Then she started bringing her husband more frequently. He was pleasant in the way that certain people are pleasant when they want something. He complimented the garden. He remarked on the neighborhood, on the lot size, on the mature trees. He said things like, "You must rattle around in here alone," with a smile that was meant to sound caring and landed somewhere else entirely. The house was paid off. My husband and I had managed that 15 years before he died, along with the pension and the RRSP he'd set aside, and my own teacher's pension. I was not wealthy, but I was stable, comfortable. The house itself, a 4-bedroom on a generous lot in Oakville, had appreciated considerably. I knew that. I wasn't naive. By the summer after my husband's death, her husband had started mentioning a development company he knew. Casually. The way you mention the weather. He said the market was strong, that older properties on large lots were being scooped up, that people were making life-changing money. He looked at me when he said life-changing, as if I were a woman who needed her life changed. I nodded and poured more tea. My daughter, for her part, said very little during these conversations. She looked at the table. She stirred her tea. She had a way of being in a room without fully being there that I had noticed since she was a teenager, a kind of hovering absence, and I had always told myself it was just her nature, that some people were like that, internal. I had never let myself think it was avoidance. I let myself think it now. The conversation shifted slowly over the following months. What had been casual mentions became direct suggestions. Her husband thought I should consider selling. Not the whole property, perhaps. Just the back portion. A severance. The lot was deep enough. The city was rezoning. He knew people who could make it very easy. He spoke about it the way he spoke about everything. Efficiently, with a kind of compressed enthusiasm that left no room for questions to form before the next point arrived. I told him I would think about it. What I thought about, mostly, was my husband. About the afternoon he built the raised garden beds along the back fence, how his knees bothered him, but he wouldn't stop. How he came inside with dirt under his fingernails and called it honest work. About the way the light came through the kitchen window at 4 o'clock in October, golden and thin and going fast. About how a house is not just a structure but a record, a proof that something happened here. I was not going to sever my lot. I didn't say this directly. I know now that I should have. But she was my daughter, and her husband was not a man who received clarity without turning it into a conflict, and I was still, in those days, trying to keep the peace. A habit of 67 years is not easy to set down. Her birthday fell in October. She turned 38, and I drove up to Toronto and took them both to dinner at a restaurant she had chosen. Expensive. The kind of place where the menu is printed on a single card with no prices. I gave her a bracelet that had belonged to my mother. She thanked me and put it in her purse and did not take it out again during dinner. Her husband spent most of dinner on his phone. On the drive home I listened to CBC radio and I told myself it was fine, that people were busy, that she loved me in her way. I told myself these things the way you tell yourself the ice is holding, with concentration and without looking down. The call came in February. She rang on a Thursday evening, which was unusual. She rarely called without a text first. Her voice was bright in the way it gets when she is trying to be casual about something that is not casual at all. She said she had some news. She and her husband had been talking, and they'd found a financial advisor. And the advisor had some thoughts about estate planning, about the house, about how it might make more sense to transfer the property now rather than later. Given tax implications, given probate, given all the things that become complicated when someone passes unexpectedly. She said, passes unexpectedly, about me, her 67-year-old mother, who had driven to Toronto 2 months ago to give her a bracelet that had belonged to her grandmother. I asked her who this financial advisor was. There was a pause. She said it was someone her husband worked with. I asked if this advisor was also connected to the development company her husband had mentioned. Another pause. Shorter. She said that wasn't really the point. I told her I needed to think. I did not sleep that night. I lay in the bed that still smelled, faintly, and only to me, of my husband's particular combination of cedar soap and something warmer underneath. And I looked at the ceiling, and I thought about the bracelet going into the purse. I thought about her husband's eyes moving around the kitchen the first time he came for Christmas, assessing. I thought about all the things I had told myself were fine. In the morning, I called my friend Rosemary. We have known each other since our daughters were in the same kindergarten class. She is sharp, Rosemary, the kind of woman who reads the fine print and then reads it again. She listened to everything I told her, and when I was finished, she said, quietly, "You need to go see a lawyer. Not theirs. Yours." I made an appointment that same afternoon. The lawyer's office was downtown Oakville, 3rd floor, overlooking the lake. She was a woman about 10 years younger than me, composed and unhurried, the kind of person who lets silence work for her. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked me several questions about the title of the property, about any documents I had already signed, about the nature of my husband's estate. Then she said, "You haven't done anything wrong, and you haven't done anything you can't still protect yourself from." She explained my options. She talked about transferring the house into a trust, about updating my will, about designating beneficiaries clearly and legally in ways that would limit outside influence over the estate. She explained that informal conversations about property, no matter how persistent, had no legal weight. She explained that I was, at this moment, completely free to do whatever I chose with my own home. I chose to do exactly that. It took 2 appointments and several weeks. I updated my will. I established a trust arrangement. I designated a neighbor's daughter, a young woman I had watched grow up, who was now a nurse, and who had come to shovel my driveway 3 times without being asked the previous winter, as one of 2 trustees alongside Rosemary. I did not tell my daughter any of this. She called twice during those weeks. I answered both times and said everything was fine. I said I was still thinking. She said okay. She said her husband sent his regards. I said thank you. I did not feel like a woman who was being cold. I felt like a woman who was finally paying attention. The last call was on a Wednesday morning, the first week of April, when the snow was finally finished, and the forsythia outside my kitchen window had opened into that particular yellow that always made my husband set down whatever he was doing and look. My daughter called, and she was not bright this time, not performing casual. She was tight, controlled in the way that means the control is working hard. She said they needed an answer. I asked what the question was. She said I knew what the question was. I told her that I had made some arrangements, that the house was in a trust now, that I had updated everything with a lawyer and it was all sorted out, that she didn't need to worry. The silence lasted long enough that I counted it. 7 seconds. Then she said, "You did that without telling me." And I said, "It's my house." She said her husband had put a great deal of time into this. She said she had been patient. She said she didn't understand why I was making this so difficult when they were only trying to help me. I thought about the bracelet in the purse, about 47 dinners I had driven up to Toronto for, about the garden beds her father built with sore knees, about the word patient and who it was that had actually been patient in this situation. I said, "I know what they were trying to do." Another silence. 5 seconds this time. She said she needed some time. I said, "Take all the time you need." She has not called back. That was 3 weeks ago. The voicemails this week are from a different register. Not angry, not cold, just strange. Searching for the right tone and not finding it. She called 11 times. I have listened to each message and I have not called back. I am not cruel. I want that understood. I am a woman who spent 34 years in a classroom trying to teach children that how you treat people is not separate from who you are. I believe that. I still believe it. But I am also a woman who finally understands that love without accountability is not love. It's just expectation wearing love's clothing. And I spent too many years handing over too many things. My time, my presence, my patience, my mother's bracelet, to people who put them in their purse without taking them out again. The house will go, someday. Everything does. My husband knew that. He used to say that you can't take anything with you, so you might as well put it somewhere. It means something. I intend to do that. I have already had conversations with a charitable organization in Burlington that runs after-school programs for kids who need them. I have spoken to a local land trust about a conservation arrangement for the lot. Nothing is decided yet. But the deciding belongs to me. This morning the forsythia is still yellow. The coffee has gone cold again. I got up and poured it down the drain and made a fresh cup and brought it to the window and stood there in my kitchen that still smells faintly of cedar and warmth. In the house my husband and I built a life inside of, and I thought, I protected it. Not from my daughter. I want to be precise about that. I protected it from the version of the story where I am so afraid of losing her love that I hand over the only solid thing I have left and discover, too late, that I'd lost both. Some things you keep by holding on to them. Some things you keep by knowing, clearly and finally, that they were never yours to give away.